You're the author?
Yes, I am.
Well done, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to buy a book.
Okay.
Please. How much is it?
It's $12.99.
Okay.
What's the date of today? 16.
Pardon? Yeah, today's the
Yes,
16th.
Thank you very much. You take a new job.
As a returning speaker from 2020, and to thank Esther and her team, more especially for the honor that was given to me back in 2020 as the Mother of the Year award, which was given. So I'm Clarice Enderford. I'm an author, an autism ambassador, and an autism advocate for my son. If some of you here, if you remember, when I started speaking, I actually said it had to take the physical death of a baby for me to realize, for me to understand that I've been grieving for the past 12, 13 years. It was after the loss of my baby in 2017 at the age of 1 hour 20 minutes that I actually realized that I've been grieving a child that is practically alive. A 16-year-old, he's right out there waiting for me. He's autistic, he's nonverbal, and he's got cerebral palsy and epilepsy. So I talked about autism and the journey and denial leading to acceptance, raising a child with autism. But as a returning speaker today, I just want to talk about that baby that literally helped those skills to fall off my eyes. That little baby who was born just at 22 weeks, and he fought for his life and actually lived for 1 hour 20 minutes. It was then that I actually realized that you don't only mourn the death of a child, you don't only mourn the death of a loved one, you also mourn the loss of a relationship, a divorce, a friendship that has separated. You also mourn maybe a job that you've lost, or maybe a huge amount of money. There are so many of those valuable things that we lose at some point in our lives, that we grieve. We go through those stages of grief. So when I lost this baby, I actually went through those stages of grief. And I actually realized that it wasn't only when I physically lost him that I started grieving. It was when I realized that I may be losing my baby. But in losing this little boy, there were so many things that happened, including people in our communities, including myself, not really understanding what I was going through. Then I actually realized that there are so many things that all of us as a community, we have to understand. There are so many things which we are still, so many of us, I'll beg you all for me to use the word ignorant. Many of us are still ignorant about. Sometimes we are ignorant because we haven't had that experience. Sometimes we are ignorant because we think it is none of my business. So, but there's this very beautiful saying that I say, what is none of your business today, may come knocking at your door tomorrow. I'm not wishing anyone bad luck, but you never know. So in going through the process of grief, one of the things I did in my grief journey was journaling. And that started right when I was admitted for 3 weeks in the hospital. So I wrote quite a lot. The rawest of my emotions were being put down in a pen. And what I discovered after writing was that once you are writing, you are just pouring out your emotions, you're pouring out your anger. I mean, you're venting to somebody a piece of paper and a pen. That person who is a paper, that person will not judge you. That person will not ask you, why do you cry so much, or why are you writing things you are writing? That was a miracle that I found in a pen and a paper, that when you write, that doesn't come back to your face. Unlike sometimes we confide in a friend, we confide in the family members, and then later on they throw it back at you. So before this book came up, I asked myself, what do I do with this material that I've written? How can I use this? How can I transform this grief into greed? So, and during my grieving period, one of the things that I experienced was anger, a lot of it, denial. I was so angry with God. I was so angry with the rest of the world. I couldn't understand why my life is stuck and everybody's life is going. But that's what happens with grief. Everyone has to move on, as they say. In reality, when you're grieving, we move forward with our grief. So in writing this book, Grief to Grief, which is a touching tale of love, loss, and tenacity, I actually poured out my emotions, my experience, what I went through, in order to give a voice to other women who have experienced child loss before. Mind you, child loss is not only when you physically give birth to that baby. Child loss is not only when you've given birth to that baby and you've held the baby in your hand. Child loss includes miscarriage. That baby who was never held. That baby who was probably born and never had the chance to be taken home. That baby who went home and had just a few days to live. That baby who had a few hours to live was actually taken to the NICU, to the neonatal intensive care unit, and unfortunately couldn't make it. Those are some of the circumstances where we grieve when babies are lost. In writing this book as well, not only helping to give voice to other people, was also to make us understand that when someone is grieving, especially when they've lost a loved one, there are certain things that you all say, we all say, we mean well, to be honest with you, we mean well, but the person who is grieving, who is in the heat of that moment, usually will not take it that way. Some of those things, I wrote them in the book, so as to help others to understand, to learn, to kind of be sensitive around these issues. Somebody grieving, you don't come tell them, don't worry, God doesn't give you what you cannot carry. Really? So God decides to give me a baby who will live at 1 hour, 20 minutes, because God knows I'm capable of carrying that burden, that pain, that sadness. So God decides to let someone have a baby who doesn't live, who doesn't go home. Or God makes you have an incompetent cervix, so that each time you are pregnant, your waters may break at about 20 weeks if care is not taken. So some of those words, God doesn't give you what you cannot carry. What I say in the book is God helps us handle what we are given. So when He gives you these challenges, He gives you the roadmap, which are all in the book. Sometimes some people say, don't worry, God needed another angel in heaven. And He chose just mine. He chose just yours if you've lost the baby before. So I won't take much of your time. The book Grief to Grief was meant for those who have experienced child loss before. Anyone who's interested in reading the book, usually I say, reading gradually. In the book, it's not all about loss, it's not all about grief. The first chapter talks about love. Because when you are grieving, you grieve. You tend to forget that there's any other person around you, that you know that this pain I am feeling, you are the only one feeling it. Because us women, you've carried that baby in your womb for that length of time. So it's obvious, it's natural that you feel that pain. In the heat of the moment, I lost faith, I lost confidence in God, in everyone around me. So at some point, when I turned and when I asked God, reverse this pain, help me, tell me what to do. So I started by reconciling with Him. I started looking back to where all this love started, which is chapter 1, is actually the Romeo and Juliet of the book. So if you're interested in the book and you have a copy, you read it gradually, you will realize that when you're going through the book, you also experience all those emotions. And then the book also helps you maybe to visit that ungrieved grief that you've had in the past. It may be something, there may be the loss of a father, the loss of an uncle, or the loss of something valuable to you in the past which you never had the chance to go through. So this book actually gives you the chance to go back. It may hurt, it will hurt, it will bring tears, but at the end of it, you will smile that, wow, so these emotions I've been feeling, this thing I've been feeling was actually grief, which is the joy in it all. And in all, before I end, this was actually the journey, was in losing this baby that several things were realized, like I said. I felt like I had scales falling off my eyes. I became a new person. Grief does not only mean sadness all the time. When we grieve, there's also that route to acceptance. You accept your real you, the route to reality. Accept that this is the situation, and where do I move from there? You move forward with your grief, accepting that this is what has happened, and there's nothing you can do to change what has happened, but there's a lot that you can do to change what has happened tomorrow.